Hello and welcome to Chapter 4 of the OpenStax Lifespan Development textbook. Today we're going over social and emotional development in infants and toddlers, birth to age 3. You can find a link to the free textbook in the description below. Thank you to OpenStax for providing this free resource for students. Let's begin. Figure 4.1. Infants show the beginnings of their individuality and personality through emotional and social behaviors, such as bonding activities like making eye contact during nursing and smiling while interacting with a parent. Chapter outline. Here are the main topics we're going to be discovering today. 4.1 Autonomy and sense of self in infants and toddlers. 4.2 Temperament and personality. 4.3 Emotional development. 4.4 Social development. And 4.5 Social context and influences. 4.1 Autonomy and sense of self in infants and toddlers. We're going to briefly look at and describe the concepts of autonomy and sense of self, identify the early milestones of self-awareness and development of self, and describe the beginnings of gender identity and the role of gender socialization in development. Figure 4.2. Toddlers are just learning visual self-recognition when they see themselves in the mirror. Let's look into that further. As you can see in Table 4.1, the results of the mirror test of infant self-recognition. In the column to the left, we're going to look at the age range, and then to the right, we'll look at the typical reaction to the mirror test. From 6 to 12 months, the typical reaction should be that the individual shows social interest in a potential playmate. From 12 to 18 months, this is where they express wariness, avoidance, and maybe confusion. From 18 to 24 months, this reveals self-recognition by touching their own nose. Figure 4.3. Gender socialization begins shortly after birth and includes the way caregivers select clothing and accessories for young infants. Further, in Figure 4.4, media exposure often presents toddlers with exaggerated gender stereotypes, such as the stereotype of, as seen in Image A, a girl as a beautiful princess, and in Image B, a boy as a strong hero. 4.2 Temperament and personality in infants and toddlers. We're going to distinguish between temperament and personality and describe models and the type of temperament, describe the major environmental influences on temperament and early personality, and briefly explain Erikson's first and second stage of psychosocial development. In Figure 4.5, Thomas and Chess in 1977 identified a temperamental model that identifies 9 traits. For each trait, infants may span a spectrum from low interest to high interest. We're going to look at the trait first, then discover the high expression and the low expression of each. The first trait is activity. This is the physical arousal and movement. High expression includes being hyper and active. Low expression includes sedentary and slow. Rhythmicity is the next trait, which is routine and schedule of sleep, feeding, and potty. High expression is rigid and predictable. Low expression is spontaneous and unpredictable. Next, affect/quality of mood. This is the typical mood quality as positive or negative. High expression is happy or pleasant. Low expression is unpleasant or distressed. Next is intensity, which is the level of arousal associated with emotions. High expression is intense. Low expression is calm. Approach is the sociability and interest in approaching others. High expression is sociability and being sociable, and low expression is withdrawn. Adaptability is next. It's the interest and comfort in novel situations and experiences. High expression includes confidence, and low expression includes cautiousness. Next is sensitivity. This is the sensory threshold to light, sounds, and new foods. High expression is reactive to environments. Low expression is tolerant of environments. Distractibility is the ability to refocus attention on a new task. High expression is fleeting focus, and low expression is enduring focus. Persistence is the last trait, is the ability to continue attempting a challenging task. High expression includes maintaining motivation. Low expression is quickly losing motivation. Figure 4.6, you're seeing an image of Erikson's psychosocial theory of development, which has 8 stages as we've discovered in previous classes and chapters. And so in the first couple stages is what spans 0 to 2 and 2 to 4 years, which is characterized by, in stage 1, the trust versus mistrust stage. In this stage, we identify if we are able to trust in the sense of our caregivers consistent in the level of care that they give, or do we develop a sense of mistrust? And then stage 2 is where we identify autonomy versus shame and doubt. If we are supported during this stage, then we will develop a sense of independence, or do we experience a sense of shame and doubt from 2 to 4? These are all stages that we will explore throughout the class as we navigate the different life stages. In figure 4.7, a caregiver holding and comforting an infant when they cry can help the infant build the foundations of self-regulation and emotion regulation, again, as identified in stage 1 of trust versus mistrust. Section 4.3, emotional development in infants and toddlers. We're going to discuss the relationship briefly between emotion, mood, and emotion regulation, distinguish between primary and secondary emotions, and identify the important early milestones in emotion regulation. Looking at figure 4.8, this bidirectional view of mood allows us to plot an infinite number of points along the 2 dimensions of pleasure and arousal. We have high pleasure, low arousal, and high arousal, and the 4 domains being calm, excited, distressed, and lethargic. Now in table 4.2, we have the primary emotions in infancy. Let's look at the emotion and then the facial expression. With joy, the individual smiles, raises cheekbones, increases the corners of the eyes. With sadness, the individual frowns, raises inner eyebrows, and may show tears. Fear, an individual widens eyes and stretches the corners of the mouth. With anger, the individual moves eyebrows and corners of the mouth downward. In disgust, individuals crinkle nose, closes their eyes, and may stick out their tongue. And finally, surprise. The individual widens eyes and opens mouth wide. Figure 4.9. Infants are often dependent on their caregivers to help regulate their emotions through touch and cuddling. Figure 4.10. Caregivers can help toddlers label and understand their emotion. Section 4.4. Social development in infants and toddlers. We're going to briefly identify milestones in social development in infancy and toddlerhood, describe the major elements of attachment theory, describe the development of the major attachment styles, and explain environmental and cultural variations in attachment. Figure 4.11. Infants start to display social smiles at approximately 8 weeks of age in response to caregivers' smiles. Figure 4.12. Joint attention is the ability of infants and toddlers to follow a caregiver's gestures or voice to attend to a shared stimulus, such as a book. Figure 4.3, famous experiment. The Harlows provided infant monkeys a choice between surrogate mothers that provided either food or comfort. What do you think? Would the monkey in this case go to the clothed monkey or the caged monkey that provided nourishment? What was discovered is that the monkeys spent most of their time with the clothed mothers and only minimal amount of time with the caged mother that provided the nourishment. Figure 4.14. In image A, Cupid dolls, popular in the early 20th century, had exaggerated infantile features such as rounded bodies, short limbs, and large eyes. In image B, newborn infants, and in image C, puppies and other mammals show many of these same features. Table 4.3, strange situation procedure. This is provided by Ainsworth. In step 1, we have the action. Caregiver and infant are left alone in the testing room. The observation here is the infant's response to novel room, interest in toys, social referencing, and eye contact with the caregiver. In step 2, the stranger or the research assistant in the study enters the testing room. The observation is the infant's response to novel person, social referencing, and eye contact with the caregiver. In step 3, action here is first separation. Caregiver exits the testing room. We're observing the infant's response to absence of caregiver and the infant's soothability and reaction to strangers' attempts to comfort. In step 4, the action is the first reunion. The caregiver re-enters the testing room and the stranger quietly exits the testing room. Observation here is the infant's response to the caregiver. And in step 5, we have the second separation. Once the infant is calm, caregiver leaves the testing room once again. We're observing the infant's response to the absence of caregiver. In step 6, the action is the stranger re-enters the testing room, and we're observing the infant's reaction to strangers' attempts to comfort. And finally, in step 7, we have the second reunion. This is where the caregiver re-enters the testing room, and what we're looking at is the infant's reaction to the return of the caregiver. Figure 4.15. In Canada, September 30th is the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, dedicated to remembering Indigenous children who were abused and neglected and sometimes died in the last century's Canadian Indian residential school system. 4.5. Social contexts and influences in infants and toddlers. We'll briefly identify major contexts for social and emotional development in infancy and toddlerhood and describe cultural and familial variations in major contexts for social and emotional development. Figure 4.16. In images A, B, C, and D, families come in many different constellations with many combinations of caregivers and children. In figure 4.17, one type of child care is center care, in which children are cared for in large classrooms with play spaces. Child care centers around the world may also vary on adherence to public health protective measures, such as wearing masks during times of high community health risks. In Figure 4.18, more infants and toddlers than ever before have access to personal electronic devices such as tablets and mobile phones. This is going to conclude Chapter 4 of the Lifespan Development textbook provided by OpenStax. I appreciate you viewing this chapter, and I hope to see you in the next one for Chapter 5. Once again, you can find a free link to the textbook in the description below. Thank you, OpenStax. Have a good rest of your day.